make sure I can, there we go. So my name is Tony Buonomo. I am the social worker at the Barlow Center here. It is my distinct pleasure today to have invited a couple of members of the Alzheimer's Association, who I will introduce in a moment, Michelle and Roni. First, just to briefly tell you about myself, I have been the social worker here since August of 2022. My role here as the social worker is I provide practical and emotional support to our patients and families here at the Barlow Center. And that includes a variety of different supports, including, but not limited to, connecting people with resources at home and in the community that can be supportive to them, including, of course, the Alzheimer's Association, which is why we're here today. Just in case you have not met me before during one of your visits, I am available in the office Monday through Friday, and of course, in between appointments to support you. The way you can get in contact with me, just to begin, I will mention this too at the end of the session, but in case you did not know, you can always request a referral from the doctor to speak with me, or there are business cards at the front desk at the Barlow Center with my phone number on them, and you can contact me anytime you would like. So before I turn things over to Roni and Michelle and let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association and all the wonderful work they do, I did want to mention that the reason I invited them in is because we work a lot with the Alzheimer's Association. We view them as an amazing and invaluable partner. One, because they just have so many resources, which Roni and Michelle are going to tell you about during the session. And because, we are located in New York City, the Alzheimer's Association is located all over the country. So no matter where you live in this country, they can help you. So we do send directly from our office, we do send many referrals to the Alzheimer's Association for, as I said, all kinds of supportive resources, including, but very much not limited to, social work, caregiver education and support groups. And one thing that we do a lot is because, as I said, we're located here in New York, Alzheimer's Association is all over. We do frequently send referrals to the Alzheimer's Association and all the chapters located nationally when people with dementia and their caregivers don't live here. I have sent referrals to Texas, North Carolina, Washington State, and also, many other places in New York, like Long Island, like Hudson Valley, like upstate. And also, Roni and I collaborate a lot together. Roni is a care consultant and a social worker over at the Alzheimer's Association. We do share clients, but we also complement each other. We provide complementary supports, meaning if there's something, for example, like a caregiver support group, which I myself don't host here, I can let somebody know, hey, Alzheimer's Association, they have wonderful groups. They're led by a wonderful social worker. Her name is Roni. I'd love to connect you. So before I introduce Roni and Michelle further, I did want to mention two things. One is that we will have a Q&A portion at the end. If at any point you want to drop a question in the chat, you can do it anytime during this presentation. It won't be answered until the end of the presentation during the Q&A portion, but it will absolutely be answered. Similarly, for data collection purposes, we will put a survey link in the chat at the end of the presentation. If you would be so kind as to fill it out, it helps us continue to run wonderful programs like this. So that's very much appreciated. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two wonderful guests today from the Alzheimer's Association, Michelle Greco, who is the Senior Director of Programs at the Alzheimer's Association, and Roni Kersey, who is a care consultant and a social worker at the association.
Excellent. Tony, thank you so much for the introduction. And most importantly, thank you so much for your collaboration, not only on this program today, but on all of the collaboration that has been built over the recent months and years that established the foundation to do a joint program like this today. So thank you so much. As Tony mentioned, my name is Michelle Greco. I'm the Senior Director of Programs for our New York City chapter. Just wanted to start by sharing our mission as the foundation for what we do here. So the mission of the Alzheimer's Association is to lead the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and the piece we're talking about today, which is maximizing quality care and support. Next slide. The one thing we wanted to start by doing is reinforcing what Tony shared. You don't need to understand the nitty-gritty of the structure of our organization, but we wanted to highlight what this means for you. So Roni and I, the two people you're meeting today, both work for our New York City chapter. Our office is based in Midtown Manhattan. We provide programs and resources directly through the 5 boroughs. And as you've already heard from Tony, we collaborate closely with the Barlow team and other New York City-based institutions. Of equally important note is that the Alzheimer's Association is a national organization, as you've heard. So there are colleagues of ours sitting in different chapters all around the country. And if you come to us and needs to connect in from another place, we can connect you there. But as Tony referenced, if you're a patient at the center and live elsewhere from New York City, he can provide you with a connection to one of our colleagues around the country. Next slide. Maybe frozen. Okay, so now with that, I'm happy to introduce you to my colleague, Roni. She can let you know a little bit about her role. She serves as one of the care consultants here at the New York City chapter, and she is a much more direct liaison and connection to the patients and families that we meet through Tony. So Roni, I'll hand it to you.
The all important, remember to unmute yourself, right? So good evening. As has been said, my name is Roni Kersey. I am a care consultant and a social worker at the New York City chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I'm part of our care and support team. And my particular role on our care and support team is I am responsible for overseeing all of our early stage programs. So those are support groups and also social engagement programs for individuals living with an early stage diagnosis. We also support care partners and caregivers, and I have a colleague who's my counterpart who does a lot of the caregiver work, and then we cross-pollinate all the time. Like I said, I primarily oversee our early stage program, and that's a big part of the reason why Tony and I end up kind of working together, because a lot of the people that do get referred to our chapter have been recently diagnosed and are likely in the early stage. So what I'm going to talk to you, how does the initial contact with us work? So it can come through community referrals from places like the Barlow Center or other diagnostic and treatment centers. People find us on their own, right? Whether they search Google, somehow they see a promotion that lists our 800 number, which is our national helpline, and they'll have an initial contact with them and then get connected with the local chapter for that local touch and local resources. And then, I think this is an interesting little tidbit. We ask sometimes, oh, how did you find us? And this one person said, well, I asked ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, what's the best place to learn about the Alzheimer's disease? And they gave them the Alzheimer's Association. So however you find us, we are here for you. So then I guess maybe thank you, you anticipated the next slide. So then what happens, right, once you find us? So let's say that I get a referral from Tony at the Barlow Center saying, hey, reach out to this person. I think they would be interested in some early stage supports and resources. So the first thing I'm going to do is reach out, try to get a hold of you by telephone and have a conversation. And the purpose of that conversation is really to do what we in social work call a rapid assessment of needs and concerns, but really what it means is I'm getting to know about you and your circumstances and your situation. And, I'm going to be learning what's top of mind for you right now. What are your biggest needs right now? What are your biggest questions right now? Everything we do, from my first hello to you and my questions of learning about you, is going to be done in an emotionally supportive way. So like has been said, I am a licensed social worker. My colleague, Dana, who works primarily with caregivers, is a family and marriage marriage and family therapist, sorry. And so we understand that, yes, you're coming to us for information. Yes, you're maybe coming to us for referrals and resources, but everything has an emotional component to it when you're dealing with this disease. And so we're going to make sure that, we are giving you information, we're learning about you, and we're going to be doing that in a way that feels emotionally supportive to you. And that, when we talk, I learn more about you. I might realize, okay, well, you're in some need of some disease education. You might realize that, or I might realize that. We'll probably realize that together as we're talking, right? And maybe here's some coping techniques that can help you out right now. This is just very broad, strokes. Certainly ask us if you have more specific questions, put that in the chat or ask us in the questions and answers. So I just want to give you an overview. So once we kind of figure out what's going on and learn what's going on with you, I just want to back up a little bit and say, in my experience, people come to us typically in kind of one or two ways, maybe somewhere in between. That is, they either are completely sort of deer in the headlights, trying to take this in and don't even know what questions to ask because it's all so new. They don't even know how to start thinking about it. And so that's why assessment is important, and asking you questions to understand where you are right now is important. Sometimes people come to us on the other end of the spectrum where they have 100 questions and they feel like they want to learn and need to know everything right now. And my job then, and my colleague's job then, begins to help prioritize. Because if we try to download you with everything that you're going to need for this journey up front, then you'll be paralyzed with too much information to take in. And so our job is to help, what are the next steps? So we'll identify that with you. That's a collaborative process. And then we always make sure to reassure you that we will continue to be here for you, right? So maybe where you come with, I need to know this, and this, and we'll say, okay, let's concentrate on these things for now. But then as new questions arise, or when those things are done and when you're ready for the next steps, then you come back to us and we'll do this again. And we'll keep doing it so that you continue to feel supported. I know I speak for my colleagues and myself when I say that the reason we go into this work is because, and Tony too, because I know, Tony, we've had enough conversations. The reason we do this work is because nobody should face this diagnosis alone. And so it's difficult to face alone, and so we're here to support you. When Tony sends me a referral, if I can't get a hold of you by phone and have that initial sort of assessment conversation, then we'll send an email to let you know about our programs and services in New York City. When Tony sends a referral, he'll check off like, oh, they're interested in early stage programs, or oh, they're interested in disease education, or they're interested in this. And so he'll give us a little bit of information about you, and we'll, kind of highlight those services in our response to you. But then we'll encourage you to get in touch with us so that we can support you in a more customized way. I guess that's that for that slide. So as I said, we continue to be here for you as new questions arise, as new concerns arise. You can continue to reach out to us, and Michelle will talk after me about different ways that you can stay connected to us. But we don't provide what's called case management services. So in other words, you're not going to have a weekly or a monthly recurring meeting with anyone. We might schedule some follow-ups, but it's not like, well, your appointment with us is going to be Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. That's more case management. And we don't really proactively reach out to you. It's really, you decide the pace and you decide when you need us. and we're here for you every time you reach out to us. But it is a little bit more self-directed than the kinds of ways that a case management, and even I think at the Barlow Center might kind of set things up, support up for you. We really try to complement. Tony mentioned that he and I work together. We kind of have learned, I've been here a couple of years now at the Alzheimer's Association, and Tony and I have learned that it's good for us to sort of check in and make sure we're not duplicating effort, because we know that there's already a lot on your plate, and sort of the last thing you need is similar resources coming at you from different directions. So we try our best to coordinate that and to streamline that. But certainly let us know how we're doing, right? We try to, make sure we're not letting you fall between the gaps either. The best thing that I think that we do, best things we do that complement what you get at the Barlow Center and what Tony and his colleagues provide is we have our 24/7 helpline. And Michelle's going to talk about it more, but the point that I really want you to understand about that is I think sometimes people hear helpline and they think crisis line. It is not a crisis line. We are a nonprofit. We cannot afford to staff our local offices up with people who are available to take your call. All of our constituents. And so we've concentrated that for efficiency, and you can call our helpline. All they do there is take calls from people when they have questions, and then they can direct you back to us if you need the local touch. But the idea is that someone is there who's a dementia specialist who can answer your questions, give you information about programs, give you referrals, give you education. They can connect you to a social worker who's standing by if you need more of emotional support or more of what social workers do. And then we also provide in-depth disease education. We will always encourage you to go back and talk to your doctor, but we know that you leave the doctor's office and you think of 10 questions that you hadn't thought of when you were there. Or you realize that the doctor said something and you're not sure what that means. And so that's where you can come to us, and we can give you, we can't tell you about your specific diagnosis and prognosis, but we can tell you about the disease and we can, for instance, let you know the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. That's a big one that we get. And I think it's important to say that even though we are called the Alzheimer's Association, we support people with all types of dementia. Alzheimer's just happens to be the most prevalent form of dementia, but so that's an example of kind of the question I got back from my doctors. They said I have MCI. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's? And we can give you enough disease education that if we don't answer your questions, we can help coach you for those follow-up questions to take back to your medical team. And I think that's it for this slide. I covered everything, I think, Michelle, so we can go on to the next one. And that's it for me. So Michelle's going to talk a little bit more specifically about all of our individual services. And Michelle, you're muted.
I did it too. As we shift into this next section, as Roni noted, I'm going to share an overview of what we consider the more ongoing programs that you can connect to beyond just any conversations that you may have with Roni or one of our other care consultants. Because within our overarching umbrella of care and support services, the team that we have here in New York City and different versions around the country, we have those members that are doing a lot more individual support, which is the services that Roni spoke of. But then we have a core group of people that are working on some of the broader educational and community engagement efforts. So I'm going to give you this slide here, gives you just a quick list of the different services, and I'm going to let you know a little bit more about each one. Roni gave you a great introduction to our 24/7 helpline. I'll share a little more about local information and referrals, follow-up care consultations, which is the exact types of services Roni was speaking of, support groups, early stage social engagement, and our safety services and referrals. So Tony, you can go to the next slide. So the first one, if there's one thing you walk away with from today, there's tons of great information that we hope you can return to. But the greatest takeaway, if you're going to write something down, is the phone number for our 24/7 helpline. So our contact center, as noted, is staffed 24/7 with trained helpline agents and clinicians. The people there are there to provide support and information to people with the disease, family members, caregivers, healthcare professionals, general public. So they are equipped with a range of information and connections to resources, both broad and local, that they can connect you back to. And again, all of these conversations are confidential, available from a question in the middle of the day to a question in the middle of the night for anyone looking for decision-making support, crisis assistance in the moment, and education on any kinds of issues that families face every day. So there could be things like medication, treatment options, legal and financial care decisions. Want to note that there is a translation service available through our helpline where we could help people access the information they need in up to 200 different languages. So that's an important component of this. And most importantly, we love the balance of having this great service that we can refer people to around the clock, and the fact that the contact center then refers people back to us locally as well if they need additional information. So that actually leads right into the next slide, which is getting more information on local information and referrals. So if after this call or anyone reaches out to our helpline first, we get notice of anyone that reached out to the helpline, and if that person requested individual connection with the local office, we'll follow up with you. So our dementia care specialists that are here locally are here to answer any questions that you would have at any time. Again, it's not that you can call in any moment, but we will follow up with you to help provide connections to community referrals. Our home office helpline has a very large database of community resources around the country, which I'll talk about in a bit. But here at the local chapter, we also maintain a more comprehensive resource directory of local resources. So that's another form of information we can help with if you do get connected back to us. Next slide. What Roni was speaking about early on is what we call care consultations. But what a care consultation is a meaningful conversation with someone who has expertise to help you navigate through a difficult time. So we have specialists here locally that can have the exact kind of conversations with you that Roni spoke about early on. Anything from broader care planning to more concrete emotional support if someone is having a struggling time, and clarification on your questions. So this is a service that's available both through our helpline and also available locally. Next slide. Another thing that we do, and as Tony referenced, this is something that is one of those wraparound types of services that the Alzheimer's Association provides that is not directly provided by Barlow, are our support groups. So we facilitate support groups for both caregivers and for people living with dementia. At this point, many of our groups are still happening virtually or telephonically, although others we're starting to bring back more in person. We really try to respond to the community needs and what the members find would be the best way for them to have this connection. All of our groups are facilitated by trained facilitators, either volunteers and or staff, and we do offer these groups in multiple languages. So I know the term support groups is familiar. It's a way to engage and really be having those meaningful conversations. Differing from that is our social engagement program that we call Pathways here. Pathways is a series of programs that we have for people living with Alzheimer's and dementia in the early stages. And we're really happy that we can host these programs because we know, and research has shown, that social engagement is actually a protective factor for people living with early stage disease. All of our programs are led by trained facilitators who adapt the environment and the content to the audience in order to provide really meaningful peer-to-peer connection. And this is in a non-support group setting. So I think it's important to differentiate between the two. Some people may be drawn to both versions of connection in a formal support group and a social engagement program, but this is an alternative option also for folks that may want to connect more on a social level. Most of these programs are still offered virtually, and there's a huge range of topics. Tony has links to all the work that we do. These are just a few that we've done in the past, constantly evolving based on interest and our facilitators and their expertise. Next slide. Another thing that we just want to make you aware of, the association has a national partnership with MedicAlert. So this is a service that we can provide information on. Our helpline is a really good resource to explain how this service works, if this is something that at some point you or your family would need to tap into as a service. Next. Okay, so those are some concrete things. What I also want to show you is a glimpse into some of the online tools that are available. You don't have to leave your house to be able to access some of the different tools and information that the Alzheimer's Association has. And then I'll close with a glimpse of just some of the stuff that's happening right now in this next month. Okay, so our website has a wealth of information and tools. I will say this is just a selection of the tools that we wanted to highlight today, but at any point in your journey, there is always more to learn. And for someone that wants information that is structured in a way that is very targeted for specific audiences on specific topics, our website is a really great resource. And what I'm going to do next is highlight a few specific tools that you can see on the website: ALZ Connected, ALZ Navigator, our e-learning platform, and Community Resource Finder. So ALZ Connected is actually a social networking community online. It's actually a free online community for folks affected by Alzheimer's or other dementia. There are separate groups for caregivers, people living with the disease, geographic, there's all sorts of groups that you can imagine, but it's an online community that provides that access to connection that you may need at any point. So that's a great thing that you could potentially tap into. And the next one is actually called ALZ Navigator. This one was actually, it's been around for some time, but it just went over a nice overhaul recently to make it even more, I think, interactive and useful. So I'm actually going to read you this one because I want to make sure I accurately describe what you would get. ALZ Navigator is an interactive online tool designed for anyone experiencing memory loss or caring for someone who is, by providing concrete guidance on next steps. The tool enables users to make a customized action plan that can contain information and resources based on questions that you answer. So it lets you answer some questions, help identify some of your core needs, and then helps print out an actual customized action plan at the end of that process. Another piece that I want to share is that if this is something of interest to you, but you just want to dip a toe in, you actually can use this tool without creating an account and sharing all your own information. You can actually just access it, pull out your report. So it's another nice tool. Again, nothing is like a conversation like a Tony or a Roni or someone else, but it may be another tool to help frame out what some of those concerns are about which you may want to then have a conversation or seek support. Okay. Next one. Now, this is an area where the other part of our team works a lot in our education programs. So we do a ton of in-person education programs right here in New York City at all different locations, but we're talking about what you can access from home. And we actually have an e-learning library, a virtual learning platform with recorded educational content on everything from understanding Alzheimer's and dementia, managing money, effective communication strategies. So all education modules that you can access right from your home and at your own convenience. So you may have interest in attending a community-based program, but may not have the time or availability. This is something available to you at all times. And then the last one that I wanted to reference is our Community Resource Finder. This is a great tool online. It's actually was developed jointly with AARP, and CareLike is involved as well. It's a tool where you plug in your zip code, you click in what are the kinds of things that I want information on in your local community, and it can then give you some direct information right there. So again, as I said, this is a nice complement to the even more detailed directories that we have in our local offices, but it's a great starting point often to be able to access general information on resources in your community. Okay, and finally, do not expect anyone to read this. We will share if interested, but every month, and this is all available on our website as well, we have a range of programs that are happening here throughout the New York City area, both in person and virtually. This is just a glimpse of our October calendar, so you can get the flavor of it. But the first page talks all about the different education programs that we have. And on the right of your screen, you can see some of the highlights of what's happening right now with early stage social engagement. So right now there's a virtual program with New York Therapy Animals, virtual world tours program, and then links to how to get information on our support groups and personal care consultations. So we have some really nice little summaries of all the different programs and services available to you. And with that, that completes our overview of services. I'm going to mute myself now and pass it back to Tony and then Roni to be able to answer any questions. Thanks.
I'm going to pause sharing for a moment. That way I can, I know we have a few folks here, so I want to make sure I can see anyone's questions or if anyone has raised their hands. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to use your hand raising tool, or you can put it in the chat and we can answer it that way too.
And to lead into that, if folks are still thinking, I will say Tony, Roni, and I had a conversation earlier today, and we were sharing some of the themes of the stories of when it's worked really well that our two organizations have been able to collaborate and really share those kind of joint and differing and pairing well programs that can work with each other, maybe to get people thinking. I don't know if there's a piece that either of you would want to share with the group. I'm gonna mute.
Tony, do you want to go or?
Yeah, so what I was going to say in this portion of this is, you know, as someone who, this is my first time working in the dementia field. Previously I worked with patients with cancer, so being able to work with someone like Roni, who's experienced in this field, and being able to learn so much about what resources she offers has been amazing. I know from our end, we've had a couple of mutual clients who are patients. They are still patients at the Barlow Center, and because, you know, as we said before, Roni and I are complementary services. We don't overlap in all the same ways. We've had a couple of people we've worked with where we've been able to work together in a way where so I'm thinking one person in particular who from me was able to get home health aides. That's the thing we set up through the doctor's offices. This person was able to find a therapist, which is something we were set up through our office. But also, this person was able to join a support group through the Alzheimer's Association. Right now, the Barlow Center does not have an active patients support group or a persons with dementia support group. The Alzheimer's Association does. And we've been able to link up not just that one person I'm thinking of, but many other people with those support groups. And in that way, by Roni and I meeting, taking time out of our days and our weeks to discuss these cases, we're able to find the person, for these people, ways I can help them and ways Roni can help them in ways that don't overlap, but in fact complement each other and give this person the care that they need.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Tony, that I really appreciate with you that you really recognize the value of peer support. You know, I know you have the peer groups for the caregivers, but you really recognize the value of the peer support for the person living with dementia. So we get a lot of referrals from Tony for this. And, you know, I like to have the things that I think I'm seeing sort of validated, right, from other professionals. So in my experience, when people with early stage come to our early stage support groups, and I hear the same on the caregiver side too, a lot of they certainly always report that what they experience is a feeling of camaraderie, feelings of feeling less alone, feeling less isolated. Even if they have a lot of friends and family support, there's certain feelings of aloneness if you don't know other people who are going through what you're going through. And so that's what peer support groups offer. They also, I think, I've seen for a lot of people kind of boost self-confidence. There's a lot of stigma that comes with this disease. And I think people just coming to an environment where they're accepted, where they see other people that they're like, oh, well, they're smart. Yeah, they're having trouble finding their words, but they're smart. They're not, you know, and that sort of I see a real boost in self-confidence. But sometimes I think that I'm seeing things the way I sort of want to see them, right? Because of the work that I do. But it's been really affirming to talk with Tony and hear like, oh, since this person's been coming to your support group, I see they're gaining in confidence, or I see that they're gaining in a willingness to accept the help that they need. So it's been really, really gratifying.
And the goal is always to provide the best service possible. And we want to be able to do that together. So I'm glad we are able to work together. I do, again, I know we have a few folks here. So if you would like, either in the chat or by raising your hand, and you know, I can always unmute people. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, you know, we'd be happy to answer them.
I'd also encourage anyone after today. We of course shared all these resources in this presentation, but we started by sharing that Tony often refers people directly to us. So if anyone on here wants to set up that direct referral, that's something that can be done. We could actually use the process that we've been talking about today to help you get to us directly. The helpline is there at any point in time, but if you wanted to be referred directly to our chapter and you are from New York City, that is something that Tony could do as well.
Yes, it is as simple as I fill out a form, I send it to the Alzheimer's Association, and their turnaround time I have found is quite wonderful.
And if you're not from New York City, also, as Tony mentioned before, you can refer you to our other chapters as well. So.